Today we've got a great story of revenge that results in gasoline being put in a diesel truck. We'll get into that in a bit, but first, they said if you leave during the fire drill, don't come back. So I went home for the day. We had a fire drill at work last week. Before it started, the announcement came over the PA, if you leave the property during the drill, don't bother coming back. It was 2 o'clock in the afternoon. My box was quiet, meetings were done, and my car was parked 2 blocks away. So when the alarm went off and we all filed outside, I just kept walking. Went straight to my car and drove home. Next day, my manager asked why I left. I said, they told us not to come back if we left. He blinked for a second and then said nothing. I was just following instructions and enjoying an early end to my Tuesday. So, maybe I'm daft, but I don't understand why they put so much emphasis on this. If you leave the property, don't even bother coming back. Like, do you want your employees to stick around for the drill or not? If you leave the property for lunch, don't bother coming back for at least 30 minutes. Lyndon Lil Blue Balls commented, this is like my company saying we'd leave straight from the Christmas party and didn't need to come back to the office. So I went, ate some food, and left within an hour of getting there. Come Monday, so many people asked where I was for the remaining 3 hours of the party. Like, why would I hang out with them on a Friday afternoon when I could beat traffic and get home to my family? OP responded commenting, honestly, same logic. If they say we can leave, I'm not sticking around just to pretend I'm productive. Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy awesome stories of malicious compliance, why not hit those like and subscribe buttons down below? Our next story is, don't clock out on breaks? Why yes, I will gladly comply. My former small company was bought by a much bigger one. When this happened, our time management system changed to a new one. Nothing extraordinary here. The new system, however, had a major flaw. It subtracted half an hour of mandatory break every day from your hours, but you could not manually clock out for longer breaks or the system would break. I, however, was taking longer breaks on some days. This was common before, and I, and my colleagues, had the approval of my supervisor for it. So with the new system, I could not clock out for my breaks properly. It had to be manually adjusted each day. I talked to my supervisor about it. He told me to go to HR and let them sort the system out. I went to HR, explained that I had approval to take longer breaks, and asked how to use the system correctly. I got this exact reply in writing, don't clock out on your breaks, the system works automatic. It was clear from the phone call earlier that what they wanted to say was, don't take breaks longer than 30 minutes. But that's not what was written. I answered and thanked them for the clarification. Cue malicious compliance, I did exactly as I was told. I took long breaks every single day, but the system only ever counted them as 30 minutes. On some days, I took like 2 or more hours of break, went into the city from the office to get some ice cream or do some shopping, and it never used more than 30 minutes of my time for it. My overtime hours were going so high that I was ordered to take multiple days a month off to compensate. This went on for about 2.5 years until we were sold again, and the new system sadly did not have the same flaw. I'm just glad for OP's sake that they stuck around and managed to survive until that company got sold off to a new company, because I would be fearful for OP if the HR ever actually caught wind of what OP truly was doing. And it wouldn't be like the craziest thing for them to want to pursue litigation here, would it? I mean, while they never explicitly in writing said don't take breaks longer than 30 minutes, OP still kind of willingly committed time theft in a way, did they not? Serta Sunyer commented, which country is this in? In the US, workers are allowed 2 paid 15-minute breaks and a 30-minute unpaid lunch per 8-hour workday. We just skipped the lunch, combined the 2 15-minute breaks, and essentially had a 30-minute paid lunch. Our next story is, just do it the way I said. I worked for a government agency that provided a service to the public through a website. I was working on a part of the website that confirmed whether or not users wished to delete their user accounts. As usual, to protect against accidental or malicious account deletion, the user has to click Delete My Account. They are then showed a screen, Are you sure you wish to delete your account? And if they click Yes, then their browser goes off and tells the server to delete their account and withdraw from all jobs they've applied for. When you go somewhere in your browser, it sends a GET request to the server because it wants to get the page contents and image contents, etc. When you submit a form, such as signing in or confirming you wish to delete your account, your browser sends a POST request to the server. A post means the server is going to change something, such as deleting your account, whereas a get merely means give me something but don't make any changes. When you click a link in a browser, for example from Twitter, your browser will only ever do a get. It will never do a post. This is why confirming you want to delete your account should be a post, so nobody can trick you into visiting a link and doing some harm. So back to the story, the project manager was a really rubbish at her job. She wasn't technical at all. Another member of staff used to assist her, which basically involved him doing all of her work and her asking him how he did it, but never seeming to remember. I was making some modifications to the site in this area when I spotted the requirement was to have the delete account confirmation page as a get. I pointed out to her that I could easily send her a link in an email, and if she clicked it, then it would delete her account on the server and withdraw her from all her job applications, and that we should change the requirement to make it a post. To hide her inadequacies, she would often shut people down, and that's exactly what she did. Told me to just do what I'm supposed to be doing rather than trying to change the requirements at this late stage and delay the release. The problem is, from experience, I know that she often makes uneducated decisions, and then when they backfire, she either genuinely doesn't remember them or lies. So I went back to my computer and I wrote to her, paraphrased, "Can you confirm something for me? The specification says to make the delete account confirmation screen a GET request. It really should be a post because it deletes users' accounts. I'm concerned a malicious person could post a link on Twitter and everyone who follows it will have their account deleted and all their job applications cancel. I just want to make sure I've understood you properly and I'm not being thick. You said you want it to remain a GET request rather than changing it to the more secure POST request. Is that right?" She replied, "Yes, as it is in the specification." So I went and implemented it as instructed. Once the changes had been deployed to our internal test servers, I emailed the head of quality assurance team. "Hi lead QA, have you seen this cool job on the server with a link to, can you guess?" "That's right, the delete account confirmation page." He received the email, opened it up, and then clicked the link text that said, "This cool job." A browser opened, took him to the test server, and he was greeted with the message telling him how sorry we were to see him go and that all his job applications have been withdrawn as requested. The lead QA said, "What? Where have all my test job applications gone?" Typing frantically, "They've actually gone. Is this a trick? Are they really deleted?" He couldn't believe what he was seeing. He asked how I had hacked the system, and I explained to him the rookie error that had been made. He logged a top priority critical security fault and rejected the release candidate, delaying the release until it was fixed and it could be retested the next day. When she saw the bug that had been logged, the project manager went mad. "Who wrote this?" she demanded to know, loudly in front of the whole office. "I did," I said. "Why on earth would you make it so other people can so easily trick you into deleting your account?" I walked over to her so I could speak quietly and not embarrass her. "I did warn this would be possible, but you insisted this is the way you wanted it." Now this is the point where she always claims she would never do something stupid. "No, I said the opposite." I say, "No, you definitely said to do it this way." She replied, "No, you've misunderstood. This way makes no sense. I would have never have told you to do something that makes no sense." My experience was that she often told me to do things that made no sense, and then when they backfired, she would say she couldn't have possibly have said to do something so nonsensical, and the fault must lie with someone else. She said, "I suggest you go back and do it properly." I went back to my computer, pulled up the text conversation, and called her over. I said, "Look, this is where I explicitly asked you if you wanted me to do it as a GET as per the specification, and what will be possible if we don't change it to a POST, and you told me to do it according to the specification." She quietly responded, "Well, just change it." I replied, "I will. I will do it properly." The release was delayed for a day so we could go through testing again. Note, testers wipe the server clean for each test round and rebuild the data through scripts, so I didn't upset the lead QA guy much. Is it better to kind of protect people the way OP did here to kind of preserve the status quo? Or should OP have kind of made a bigger stink about what went on? Like the fact that OP went through all of this exercise just to be told, well, change it then, and essentially having nobody get held accountable for anything that went on here. I mean, it worked out in the end, but how many times does OP want to have to leak something to the QA lead to make sure that things don't get implemented improperly? What if somebody else was in charge of changing up this page and didn't care or have the gumption to leak things to the QA lead? Our next story is, client asked me to report everything I do during shift. I did, then they stopped asking. I work for a US client, but I'm residing outside the US. I manage their Shopify store. My job is to upload new products, post them also on Etsy and eBay, and make sure the title tags and SEO are correct. I work remote full-time Monday to Friday. Before, I send small reports at the end of each day. Just a short message like, added 15 products, synced to eBay, fixed homepage layout issue. Very simple, everything was okay. Then one day the client messages me, they said, can you make the reports more detailed? Please include everything you do during your shift. Okay, you want everything? I give everything. The next day, I read a full report from start to end. I include everything I do. Open Shopify, check stock, edit one word in product title, refresh Slack, no message, adjust image size because it looks weird on mobile, sync to Etsy, fix small typo in description, change tag from minimalist to modern minimalist. I also include when I stand up to drink water, when I go to the bathroom. I even write what I cook for lunch. At 12:35 p.m., I boiled an egg and fried rice with leftover chicken. Took 25 minutes including eating and cleaning plate. At the end of the shift, report is almost 2 full pages. Looks like I'm writing a blog. The client had no reply that day. The next day, also nothing. 2 days later, they send the line only, okay, you can go back to the old report format. No problem, boss. To be fair, OP may have been slightly passive-aggressive here. I mean, clearly they were kind of angling for, if there is more information you can share, please be a bit more, descript about it. I just find it hard to believe that anybody that ever says log everything that you do actually wants to know about your bathroom and eating habits. Unless, they're creepy like that. Fairweather friend commented, haha and all, but asking for a little more detail in a report isn't some wildly inappropriate demand. There's obviously a reasonable balance between reporting one sentence and reporting every detail of your bathroom breaks. Our next story is, you want me to follow every step of the manual? Okay then. I used to work at a retail store that had a super outdated inventory system. It was so slow, clunky, and everyone had found smarter shortcuts to get things done faster. Like everyone, except our new manager. One day, she noticed I was getting through inventory checks too quickly and told me I must be skipping steps. I explained that I wasn't skipping anything, just doing it more efficiently. She didn't care. Follow the manual to the letter, she said. No exceptions. The next day, I followed the manual exactly, every single step, including waiting for old loading screens to refresh fully, printing out unnecessary paperwork, and getting signatures from supervisors who had no clue why they were needed. What normally took me an hour took 4 hours. I blocked the whole process. Everything slowed down. Other departments started calling to ask why their reports weren't ready. My manager, she had to step in and finish the rest herself. After that, she never mentioned the manual again. So, unfortunately, I feel like I kind of see a little bit of both sides of the situation here. I think it's more than understandable that for somebody like OP who figured out their job so well that they have shortcuts and kind of quicker, faster avenues to get the job done, that you're gonna lean towards and prefer doing things that way. But for a manager who doesn't actually know any of those shortcuts and doesn't really understand what it is you're doing and understands that there is an approved, described way to do things, I don't think it's the craziest thing that they said, I don't know about all those shortcuts you're taking, just follow the manual. But I guess it just kind of feels out of the loop or something. Tremenda Karusha commented, I mean, don't get me wrong, following procedures is essential, but this manager should have seen the system's issues and worked around it instead of being so rigid. OP responded commenting, yeah, I know we were supposed to follow, but if we can do it in a more efficient or convenient way, why not, right? Since there's a lot of work to do aside of that. Our next story is, keep winning, let payroll take care of itself. This happened almost 20 years ago. In the country I'm from, almost every worker, blue collar, white collar, manager, director, C-level, whatnot, gets 5 weeks of fully paid holiday each year, typically split into 2 or more parts. Predominantly 4 weeks of summer holiday and 1 week in winter, aka skiing holiday. In addition to that, we get a special vacation pay, which is 50% of the salary paid during holiday. That is, for 5 weeks of paid holiday, you get 2.5 weeks worth of additional money to spend on your holiday activities, or booze, or stock market. It's your money in a free country. As for me and my missus, we were a moderately well-paid, double-income, no-kids couple, and we didn't really need all that money. Instead, we opted to exchange this extra money to equal amounts of additional leave and take long trips to other continents, especially in the winter when it's very dull and slushy in our neck of the woods. That totals 7.5 weeks of paid leave, and if timed wisely, adjacent to or around bank holidays, such as Christmas and Easter, you can easily have 8 full weeks. I worked for a company about 10 years and was eventually hired to another. Negotiations with a new employer took a while, and while waiting to sign my new contract, I tried to quietly tie all loose ends in the old place to ensure a hassle-free departure. One day, I checked if I have any unused leave. It's not a biggie, it happens often, but the company pays all unused days at 1-to-1 ratio when you leave. Some companies don't pay this extra vacation pay or compensate converted time off days though, but this company did. So I checked the system and found out I had 10 weeks of unused converted vacation pay leave in the system. I was like, what? This is definitely not right, considering all the long-haul trips we had enjoyed during our extended 3-week winter holidays. Taking money for this would be unethical and someone would definitely find out and the company would send a bill afterward, or even worse, sue. So I picked up the phone and called payroll. I asked if they're sure I had really forgotten to spend so many of my holiday weeks I had worked so hard for. Well, you know what, the payroll lady said. During your employment, we've had 2 if not 3 payroll IT migrations from the old system to an entirely different kind of new system. I can see on my screen exactly what you see, and there are 0 additional details. No dates, no anything, just number of weeks. There may be some history data in the archives of the old systems, but going through that clutter would be an enormous and time-consuming task. And did I already mention that our insufficient resources are already exhausted because we have to cope with the problems caused by the latest data migration? Are you really sure you want us to do this for you? Oh no. Dear no, I said. I know when I'm defeated, and this is not a battle I choose. I wish you strength, goodbye. So when I finally resigned and left the company, I was paid for those 10 weeks and was never questioned. Now be honest, if you were faced with a situation like this, would you gamble and see if you could get those 10 weeks if you said nothing? Or would you actually speak up and say, I think there might be an error here? I'm gonna be honest, I think most people would try and go ahead and get away with it, and I think even a lot of the people who say, no, I would be honest about it, would probably secretly deep down inside still want to try to get away with it. Bobby P27 commented, I'm reminded of a situation I found myself in. I live in a European country with decent workers' rights. I had a 3-week summer holiday planned, as was not unusual for people in my role. 2 weeks before my holiday was due to start, it was announced that my role was to be transferred to an external company under TUPE rules. They had worked up an agreement. The annual leave entitlement would be split, pro rata at the date of transfer. Any unused leave from the old company would be paid out, and the new company would give an equivalent number of unpaid leave days. The result would be no loss of money or leave entitlement, perfectly fair. Based on the dates, I would have had a few days in leave credit at the transfer date, but by the time I came back for my holiday, I would be in deficit based on the pro rata accrual date. Our leave was calculated year to year, so this was entirely normal and reasonable. I went on my holiday, had a good time, and came back to work. While I was away, it turned out the management of the 2 companies realized they had bitten off more than they could chew, so decided to push the official transfer date back 1 month. The result of this was that, while on the initial transfer date I was in leave credit, On the new transfer date, I was in leave deficit. After I came back, I asked the HR person from the old company how this would be handled. He told me they had no mechanism to deal with it and simply accepted the loss. I then asked the new company HR. They told me they didn't care about the old company and would start me on day one with my pro rata leave entitlement for the remainder of the year. Net result? I got about a week of extra paid leave that year. Our next story is, smokers get more breaks? Hold my beer. This goes back about 10 years ago. Worked for a large telecommunications company as a call center supervisor. Most of my peers were smokers, and with the way the schedules were set up, there were large chunks of the day where only 2 or 3 of us were on at the same time. Our managers insisted one of us always be visible on the call center floor while also performing our regular duties. Performance reviews, call monitoring, escalations, and weekly one-on-ones with our team. I also had the largest team with consistently over 20 reporting to me. All this to set the stage. I noticed that I seemed to be the only supervisor actually doing my time being visible. But every time I tried to carve out an hour or 2 for the rest of my job, they were always out smoking. It got to the point that I was working after hours just to stay caught up. I brought it up to my manager thinking she would discreetly monitor it. She didn't. Instead, in a supervisor meeting, she announced to the entire group that she knows we have a busy job and sometimes it seems imbalanced. Understatement, but that really the smokers were just taking their lunch hour and short smoke break intervals instead, so it all worked out in the end. Cool. The next day, I came to work with a pack of cigarettes in my bag ready to go. The second I saw one of my peers going out to smoke, I went out with them. Timing the breaks, lit cigarette in my hand the entire time. It was a revolving door. They were going out to smoke almost more than once an hour and usually out there for a solid 20 minutes each time. By the end of the first day doing this, I had timed one supervisor at nearly 2 hours worth of smoking breaks. I well exceeded my own lunch hour, so I started doing it every day. Pack small snacks to munch while out instead of taking my entire lunch. One day my manager saw me heading out and seemed surprised. I just shrugged and said, yeah, I decided to start smoking. She couldn't say anything because if she had timed mine, she would have to time theirs as well. This went on for roughly a month before she announces to our management team that we would be required to start coordinating breaks among the team to make sure we had coverage. I gained not only the well-earned smugness from ruining things for all my lazy peers, but also a bit of relief from constantly floor walking. So yeah, definitely not the first time I read a story about a smoke break malicious compliance or a pro-revenge or anything like that. To be honest, as time goes on more and more in 2025, I'm more surprised that this still happens. I mean, I guess I just kind of figured with the way the world treats smoking and the statistics of how much fewer people are even smoking today, that it's still even a thing. Like, do the smoke breaks extend to like vapes now too? Yemnevek commented, I did similar when I worked at McDonald's in my teens. I realized once an hour at least, loads of people would head out for a smoke, so I started taking water breaks. Only 5 minutes, a small cup of water, but away from the kitchen and out the back. I had a manager ask me what I was doing, and when I let them know it was my equivalent of a smoke break and I'll be back in a few minutes, they protested, muttered, but begrudgingly accepted it. Our next story is Chatterbox. Late night memory from my corporate days. Years ago, I was working in an office. I had developed a close friendship with my coworker and we were literally facing each other due to a gap in a cubicle, and we would chat most of the day. Everyone would chat with coworkers. It was a friendly space. Mostly we stayed within our pod, but because of this gap in the wall, me and this other chick became close and chatted more. The person next to me didn't like that at all. She complained to the manager. He pulled us both in and said that we were talking too much and it was annoying people. So we went radio silence. A few days later, the complainer tried striking up a conversation with me. I simply said, sorry, I can't talk at work because I'm too annoying. Loud enough for the manager to hear. I said that every time someone tried to talk to me from there on out. A few days later, I got called back into the manager's office, was told I'd proved my point, and could go back to how things were. I'm sorry, I'm too annoying. You gotta love that special curmudgeon in your life that gets upset when everybody else is having fun and they can't have any themselves. Like, this story is like the epitome of reverting to and caring for daycare brain. Just a little kid mindset that they're upset that the other people are getting to play and have fun without them. Listen, OP, if everybody can't participate, none of us can have jack at all. Mother Goose 1957 commented, "One day I'd finished my work early and was free to leave, as I was paid by the hour for performing a specific task. My department had a huge mail out and I stayed behind, without pay, on my own time to help out. As we stuffed envelopes, we chatted. I was by no means the worst offender, but I was the only one who was hauled over the coals by the manager. His favorite worker, who talked far more than me, not a word said to her. I called him out on it. What, are we back in primary school? We were just chatting while stuffing envelopes, for goodness sake. Don't look at me the next time you need a hand to make your deadline." I left not long after that, not because of that incident, but it was one of the many that helped me make the decision to leave. Our next story is, manager said no OT. My boss was fond of saying there was never a reason to be working after 5. If we couldn't get our job done in 8 hours, someone else could. I worked as a field service engineer. We still carried pagers in those days. About 4:50, he paged me. I called from a payphone, grumbling to myself that it was so late in the day. He starts to gripe about something, I forget what. Looking at my watch, I see it's 5 p.m. on the dot. I hang up the phone, turn off the pager, and head home. Yeah, he was ticked. Next AM, I got an earful. All while reminding him about the no OT rule he was so adamant about. It was really worth it. Now, I'm gonna be honest, if a company says no OT, I'm very much in support of making sure that you can stop your work and go home, and that you're not letting the company take advantage of you and getting free time from you and all. But I gotta be honest, it is a bit jarring for OP to go 5 o'clock and just hang up mid-conversation. I would kind of get it if you try to end abruptly and tell them it's time to go if the call's gonna go on for 5, 10 or more minutes. But it really kind of is a jerk move to go click and just go MIA. Bobarg commented, I worked at a marketing agency and one of the contractors I worked with got told by his contract manager that the client did not want to pay overtime. He found this out in the middle of a workday, either a Wednesday or a Thursday. That afternoon, he was in a meeting with the client and was about 20 minutes into the meeting. He stopped the meeting and said, I was informed today that overtime is no longer approved. Unfortunately, because you had scheduled an early morning meeting on Monday and I'd worked late on Monday and Tuesday, I've hit my 40 hours for the week. We can continue this on Monday. He then got up, closed his laptop, and walked out. Not surprisingly, he got called the next day and was told overtime had been approved. Our next story is gasoline and diesel truck. This happened 12 years ago when I was an assistant manager of a gas station. To preface, this gas station allowed people to pump and then pay for what was pumped. Basically, it was for the convenience of the customers so they don't overpay with me and then have to come back for a refund. The issue is, they allowed the customers to select that option at the pump, then they would try to pay with a card at the pump. This wouldn't work and they would get free gas. So it was protocol to talk to these people to let them know they need to pay at the register and that the pump wouldn't take a card for that specific option. Just to clarify, the pumps would allow you to pay at the pump, but you had to select that option at the pump. So I had a customer come up to a pump that both dispensed diesel and regular gas. He was driving a fairly new Ram 3500. Since this guy was a regular customer, I didn't feel like I needed to tell him that he needs to pay at the register when he finished. But I saw in our camera system that he was using the black gas nozzle instead of the green diesel nozzle. I decided I should go out there and tell him that he's putting gas in a diesel. In case you don't know, putting gasoline in a diesel engine is very dangerous. I go out there and say, "Sir," a few times, trying to get his attention. After I got his attention, he just yells, I know, I have to pay you at the register." I say, "That's not what I'm here for, you are..." He cuts me off. "Well, whatever it is, I can wait until I'm done. I'm trying to talk to my friend. Tell me when I get to the register." I say, "But sir, you're pumping..." He cuts me off again. I said it can wait until I'm done. Malicious compliance starts here. "Okay, I'll tell you when you get to the register." So I'm watching him put gas in his diesel truck, and he has a reserve tank in addition to the primary tank. Gas at the time was $3.23, and with both tanks he put in about 50 gallons, which cost about $175. He comes to the register laughing with his friend, and I tell them the total. He just throws his credit card at me to charge. I finish the transaction and hand him his receipt, and then I say, "Can I tell you what I was going to tell you earlier now?" He changed his expression to a nicer tone than from before and said, "Sure, what is it?" "You were putting gasoline in your truck. You have 50 gallons of gasoline and a truck that runs on diesel." He said, "Well, freak me, I guess. I'll push my truck to a parking space and wait for a tow truck." I watched him and his friend push the truck to a parking lot behind the gas pumps and waited for an hour for a tow truck to pick up the truck and give the owner of the truck a ride to the mechanic shop. The friend ordered an Uber after pushing the truck. Being rude and not letting a person tell them something ended up being expensive. $175 for gasoline he can't use, a tow truck ride he wouldn't have needed if he had just heard me out, and a mechanic to drain the fuel tanks he wouldn't have needed if he let me stop him about 2 gallons in. So I'm gonna be honest, I'm not really a car guy, a truck guy, gas or diesel guy. If OP had managed to stop them about 2 gallons into filling this tank up, and then they would switch over and start filling it up with diesel instead, would that probably have been diluted enough to be okay? Or would it have still been likely that he would probably want to get the tank pumped or drained or whatnot? I'm just curious because OP kind of makes it sound like it could have been saved still, and if it could have been, that is a serious mess up. Big T464 commented, "I saw somebody do that in a motorhome at the Canyon Village gas station in Yellowstone National Park. They had to pay for a full load of gas, paid to drain and dispose of the gas, and pay for a full tank of diesel, all at park prices." Our next story is, "No client communication unless it goes through me?" Sure, I'll wait. Used to be the tech lead at a mid-sized software as a service company. When clients had serious issues, I would jump in and solve them fast. Everyone was happy. Then a new manager shows up and declares all client communication must go through me, no exceptions. Okay, boss. One day, a major client hits a production outage. They're calling, emailing, freaking out. I have the fix, but I remember the rule, so I wait. Manager's in a meeting for 40 plus minutes. By the time he replies, the client has escalated to upper management and is already threatening to cancel the contract. Afterwards, I get asked why I didn't help. I just said, "You told me not to talk to clients." I'm assuming by the lack of inclusion of it in OP's post that they didn't get raked over the coals and blamed for the whole mishap regardless. I just gotta say that I'm honestly surprised that they didn't try to make OP the clear scapegoat here. Like AnegXW commented, "Hopefully that decree was in writing and not verbal with no witnesses. Never do what they say, always get it in writing. Then when crap hits the fan, you can reply with the original decree, otherwise you're screwed." That said, our next story is, "Don't want me to work from home once or twice a month? Watch me do so twice a week." A short tale, not too juicy, but for a young post-grad who was new in the workforce, it was delicious. My part-time job, 60%, was project-based, but after a few months I was able to add another part-time position, 40%, within the same team but with a different boss. She was a subordinate of my original boss who I had an agreement with that I could work from home every Monday and Friday. Something that was communicated throughout the department early, but as I didn't have much contact with the team, I still came in most of the Mondays and Fridays for the team spirit. As life is lifing, I had construction workers over and needed one of my in-office days to be work from home. Edit, which was pre-approved and communicated, which had never presented as a problem before. Apparently, me spending the previous Monday afternoon, one of my work from home days out of office but still online and available, was such a thorn in my second boss's side that she had to shoot me a message saying that I should think well about my work ethics in the future. Boomer versus Gen Z, I guess. So I agreed and never switched to Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday to a work from home day again. But I also never came in on a Monday or Friday again. As it stood, that was my scheduled work from home day anyways. Edit, thank you to the lovely comments. To those who felt compelled to point out the apparent lack of maliciousness, I might not have caused havoc, but as being in the office and an active team member was very important to my second boss, not coming into the office twice a week was mildly malicious to me. You want me to honor my in-office days? Okay, but you'll be forced to honor my work from home days, even if that will lead to the exact opposite of what you wanted to achieve. Having me in the office more often. Hope this clears up this terrible confusion I caused. I think what's really missing from OP's story here is an added detail of explaining their work from home schedule days to that second boss that's so upset about them taking work from home days. Like, having that reaction of them being like, I hate you taking work from home, and OP being like, well, I'm literally told, approved, and scheduled to do so. And I'm gonna be doing so very regularly now. Cutest Alice commented, funny how bosses love team spirit until it means respecting someone's flexibility. You followed the rules and still got penalized for not kissing the office chair. Gen Z wins the round. Our next story is, U.S. Army complies with administration demands to revert name of Fort Gregg Adams to original Fort Lee. New York Times, in its latest move to undo diversity efforts, the Army announced this week that it had found ways to restore the names of 7 installations that long venerated Confederate heroes. But in the case of Fort Lee in Prince George County, Virginia, the Pentagon did it with a curious twist. Rather than restore the name of General Robert E. Lee, the Confederate commander who defended slavery, the Army found Private Fitz Lee, who was black and fought in the Spanish-American War. Look, I'm gonna be honest, I don't really want to stir things up and make like a political discussion going on, but is it weird for me to say that I find it weird to celebrate or honor the Confederate States of America so much? I think I've heard some arguments before in the past that it isn't just slavery that it was all about, but I feel like it's pretty hard to look past and pretty disingenuous to say, essentially, look past the whole slavery thing and look at the other real reasons this was happening. Just Wow and CA commented, does anyone realize how much money the government is paying for every name change? Every sign, every form, every incidental contractor thing, phone bills, payroll, etc. I would hate to be working in any kind of admin on these bases. What a nightmare. Make a List commented, yes, I've thought about this quite a bit over the last few weeks, but it's never been about fiscal responsibility. Believe the words or believe the actions. Our next story is, don't touch anything that isn't yours. If you say so, roomie. I stayed with my roommate for almost a year, and I'm so free that I let her use my things, but when it came to hers, she'll be super possessive. She labeled literally everything. One morning, I used her milk for my coffee after letting her use my olive oil, seasonings, even my pan for weeks. She got mad and wrote a note on the fridge saying, don't touch anything that isn't yours. Alright. Next time she ran out of dish soap and asked to borrow my pan, I pointed to her note on the fridge. Guess she didn't like the energy being matched because things got awkward between us that we barely spoke, and eventually she packed out. I don't know if it's too niche of a reference these days now that I'm getting a bit older, but OP talking about the roommate being so possessive they labeled literally everything made me think of Double D from Ed, Edd n Eddy. I just remember there was an episode in his room and he had a label gun and he was just putting a label on every single thing he could. Honestly, for some weird reason, it made me kind of wish I had a label gun. Weird Guy 215 commented, my ex was like this, and she left little sticky notes all through the house and got mad when I said cool, and did the same thing to her, and couldn't handle it. I left her when my lease was up because she didn't like anything I tried for her. She wouldn't even group shop with me so we knew what we had and didn't, but get mad if I grabbed something for me she didn't like. Controlling people are weird. Our next story is, not social enough. I'm one of those people who come in, do their work, and go. I'm not there to make friends, just my personal philosophy and the way I approach work. My supervisor and I had monthly meetings. Anyone who works in an office environment is aware of them, basically how much you suck, or not, as an employee. He mentioned to me that I need to socialize more. Sorry, but I'm here to work. He kept pushing and telling me that it would be for the betterment of my career. Fine, I will start to socialize a bit. Next monthly meeting, you're talking too much and not at your desk enough. I expressed my confusion. You told me to socialize more. I am visiting at most 10 minutes per 8-hour shift. He said it was all about perception. People see you talking and they think you're not working, and they don't know how long you were at that desk. So, I'm supposed to be social but not social? I was told to use my judgment. My response, then I'm continuing with my work as usual. If people want to talk to me, they can email or walk to my desk, but I'm not making the effort. After all, I don't want to be perceived as not working. He couldn't argue with that logic. I was eventually laid off from that position, which is fine. The supervisor told me if he could, he would fire me in our first meeting. I'm kind of curious of the general perception of most people who hear this story. Do they think it's that OP maybe is just kind of an off-putting presence? Or is it one of those things where some people flourish and work in some environments and some people just stick out like a sore thumb? Like, maybe OP just wasn't a very good fit for that crop of people. Rigorous Geek 2916 commented, I was in a sales org and expected to go to all of these after-hours social things. I hated them. I'm a pretty textbook introvert, in that I need time to recharge without people. Taking up my post-work hours with more people interaction was torture. COVID took care of some of this. I eventually retired early to get out of sales and stop the corporate buddy-buddy bullcrap. Jeff Spicolis Van commented, I would rather slam my privates into a sliding glass door repeatedly than to do any sort of after-hours social interaction with people I can barely tolerate when I'm getting paid to do so. Our next story is, you said, only use my words? Sure, I'll use only your words. I was freelancing as a ghostwriter and a client asked me to write a 1,500-word blog post. They gave me a voice memo with their rambling thoughts, full of filler, pauses, and repeat phrases. When I asked if they wanted it polished, they replied, no edits, just write exactly what I said in my words. I want it raw and authentic. I clarified again, you don't want me to clean it up or structure it? Their answer, no, just use what I gave you, nothing else, it's my brand. Okay then. So I transcribed it word for word. Every, awkward sentence and tangent with zero editing. It was a 1,500-word mess, but technically their words exactly as requested. They came back horrified. This isn't professional, why didn't you polish it? I just said, because you told me not to. I followed your instructions exactly. They later paid me again to rewrite it, this time giving me full creative control. I mean, realistically, you can't say that OP didn't do a good job. They literally stuck to use only my words, and to be fair, I think I would be just as bad. The nice thing for me is when I ramble after every story, I can edit it a little bit, I can go back and redo some things if I flub whatever I'm trying to say, and even then I still feel like it turns out very in the end. Needless to say, me talking out loud and off the cuff versus me being able to type out what I say, I swear I'm like 50 times more capable as a person if I can just type it out through text. Our next story is, manager said no personal touches in the emails, so I took out every greeting and sign off. I work in an IT support team and we handle a lot of tickets from our coworkers in other departments. My manager is usually chill, but one day she decided she didn't like how casual my email sounded. She said, no personal touches, just get straight to the point. No hellos, no sign-offs. So I did exactly that. The next morning, she got CC'd on a couple of my emails to HR and our finance team. Reset password, link attached. Invoice attached. No further action required. No hi, no thanks, nothing. I didn't even use punctuation in the last line because I figured, hey, she said no personal touches. After about a week, she told me my email sounded cold and abrupt and that I should maybe add a greeting. I just smiled and said, I thought you didn't want personal touches. Now I just send emails the normal way again. Guess she realized there's a balance between professional and just plain robotic. Yeah, so to be honest, when I send emails that are even like remotely professional, I feel like I still sound pretty robotic even with a greeting and a sign-off. Like, I don't think adding a good morning name here or a hello, name here would be in any way a casual feeling thing. Now, if OP was out here sending an email and starting it off with, sup bro, so I looked at the reports last week, maybe I could see you having an issue with that. Raw Meat Profit commented, I once got chewed out by the company owner because he was reading my sent emails to better micromanage my every waking moment. I signed off on a productive Friday afternoon to a Brit with cheers. Got told never to do that again, thumbs up. Edit, this has some upvotes, so I'll add context to make it even worse. We were general contractors. The Brit was a mechanical engineer at our go-to firm. We used them on every meaningful project. The owner's reasoning? Those people are not our friends. Triple thumbs up. Our next story is, restaurant parking lot was for customers only, so I made the owner's daughter go find street parking 4 blocks away. Years ago, I worked as a parking lot attendant for a high-end restaurant. Parking was for customers only. Not even employees could park there. I got chewed out by a manager one day because I let a cook who was running late park there. The cook apologized to me because I got in trouble. One night, the owner's daughter, completely spoiled brat, showed up and I told her, sorry, customers only. She flipped out on me, but again, sorry, I was just yelled at by Tony, the manager, and he said customers only. She wound up having to parallel park 4 blocks away and apparently scratched her bumper backing into a street sign. Tony promptly showed up and fired me on the spot. This was a beer money job, so I told him where he could stick it. A couple days later, the owner called me and apologized for the whole thing. He said the whole situation caused restaurant drama because employees took my side. I did the right thing by letting the cook park there, and then Tony overreacted by yelling at me. He obviously knew that I was being a hard butt because I'd been yelled at and wouldn't let his kid park there. He offered me my job back, but I politely declined. A couple months later, I found out that the guy who replaced me got fired for taking bribes from people to park in the lot and never go into the restaurant. Tony then got fired because turns out he was fudging sales numbers and stealing money from the till every night. And the wheels in the bus go round and round. I'm gonna be honest, the way this place is being ran and the people who apparently are getting hired to work there, it sounds like the kind of place that's only going to turn enough profit to earn you beer money as a job. Raz1161 commented, many years ago I worked in a restaurant. One of my duties was making shrimp cocktails. I was repeatedly and forcefully told, only 5 shrimp per order. The owner had guests for dinner, and part of the order was 4 shrimp cocktails. Remember, only 5 shrimp per order. The owner stormed into the kitchen demanding to know why the cocktails were so skimpy. I referred him to my boss, the chef. I remade the cocktails with approximately 10 shrimp per order and maintained this method from then on. I quit for greener pastures shortly thereafter, but I stayed in touch with a few friends. The chef was let go shortly after I left. Turns out he was skimming the food budget. Our next story is, remove incentive for overtime? Guess we'll operate normal office hours. So after leaving university, I was an engineer in a vehicle testing lab. My lab was a vehicle dynamometer which could be driven by a robot. Robotic legs operating the car pedals, so the car drives and stops. Robot keeps driving up to set speeds and stopping over and over and over, so we put miles on components and confirm they're okay. So, policy when running robot driving is that I need to carry out a safety checklist of items every 24 hours of running. This takes about 20 minutes. If I don't stop the system, it times out and brings everything to a stop automatically. Company at the time had a minimum 3-hour overtime logging policy. If you're asked to come in on a weekend, you log 3 hours of pay overtime as soon as you're in the door. This worked well for me and, in my opinion, the company. I get 3 hours overtime each day. The company gets 48 hours of progress. This was a long-running policy and everyone was happy. I inherited a new manager and she hated this. Thought I was stealing from the company and should only get paid for each minute I was on site. After a month or two, she convinced the directors to remove this policy for me if I wasn't working 3 hours. Don't know how, but she then found it disappointing that I wouldn't drive 30 minutes each way for 20 minutes of overtime on Saturday or Sundays. At the time, I was paid 11 British pounds and 44 cents per hour, Saturdays being 1.5 times and Sunday 2 times. So no, I'm not giving up 2 hours on Saturday for 10 pounds. It's okay though. I'll leave it running on Friday night and kick it off on Monday. I left without them ever reinstating it, but always sent the many annoyed customers in her direction when being quizzed on why we lost 2 days of running over the weekend. At the time, the facility hours were rated at around £1,000 per day in value add when running. Shortly after making this change, the directors would eventually see how much productivity and money they started to lose by not having OP come in over this change, right? Maybe OP could have gone at bat for themselves and tried to argue that they deserve some kind of compensatory pay for coming in and driving those 30 minutes both ways. But like at the same time, obviously OP's not bothered whether or not they do or don't come in. So obviously OP's not going to go out of their way to try to argue to make sure that they can work even more. The VWC commented, I was hired by a startup where the job involved traveling to customer installations and testing and troubleshooting their equipment. Many of us had moved over to the startup after doing the same job for a much larger company, assuming it would be essentially the same thing. It usually involved a week or two away from home, and everyone who was doing it didn't mind working a few extra hours every day if it meant you could fly home a few days earlier and either take the overtime pay or a few days off to make up for it. When we left for the first project, they said, make sure you put in all the overtime you can because we can bill for it. They billed us out at $1,000 a day and charged 1.5 times the hourly rate for any overtime we put in. So we worked 12 to 14-hour days and finished in 6 days what normally would have taken us 2 weeks if we'd worked business hours. The overtime was documented and I'm sure was billed to the customer, but nothing on our paychecks. Ownership told us that since we were salary, they didn't have to pay us the overtime. So we worked 8 hours a day for our salary, and everything on top of that we were doing for free. And they saved even more money since we didn't stay out of town as long and had lower expenses for hotel and food, and were available for more work on the second week that they could bill out. After that, we didn't work a minute worth of overtime on future jobs, which I'm sure cost them thousands, and was probably very important to a startup getting their feet on the ground, and all they would have had to do was pay us about $40 an hour when they were billing us out at $187.50. The startup didn't last very long because of that and other shady business practices, and a lot of good people lost their jobs and investment money. We all learned a harsh lesson from it. Our next story is, use your personal phone as work equipment? Okay, but when it dies, I have no other backup, so don't expect me to finish the job. Some years ago, I did a brief stint as a mail carrier with the Postal Service. Every Sunday, people were mandated to come in on rotation to do Amazon deliveries, and the rotation was usually split in 2 groups, 1-to-3 ratio, with 1 person from the tenured carriers and 3 people from the contract carriers per branch, with 3 to 4 branches reporting to our location as we were the sorting hub. This particular Sunday, we had the following complications. All 4 people from my branch were new/contract carriers, including myself, because it was Labor Day weekend and the tenured folks could not be mandated in. This was only my second Sunday delivery, and I hadn't really been trained. Our postmaster was subbing in at an out-of-state location, so we had someone filling in for her. The sub-postmaster was out this day, so we had one of the lower supervisors filling in for him. A sub for the sub. This person had just come back from a 2-month suspension for threatening to unalive someone in writing. Our scanners weren't working that day, which also meant the auto-generated routes weren't populating on them. Because it was Sunday, they were dynamic routes that changed every week based on what packages we had or where they were going. We had to go by printed routes with no directions on them. When we brought it up to the sub-supervisor that the scanner GPS wasn't working, she told us to just use your phones. We were like, what? No, absolutely not. It's bullcrap to expect us to use our personal devices as work equipment and not get compensated for us, especially for those of us who don't have unlimited data plans. She insisted, so we called our union reps from our respective branches, who told us we were well within our rights to pack up and go home, but that we would not get paid for the day. But if we stayed and couldn't finish, we would get paid the full day plus any overtime. 3 people walked out and went home, and I don't blame them, but it did mean the rest of us had to pick up their slack. I stayed because I couldn't afford to lose the pay. I did warn the supervisor that as a young femme-presenting person, I didn't feel comfortable going without any sort of communications. So as soon as my phone died, I would be coming back and going home, regardless of how many packages I still had left. She brushed me off, but off I went. Sure enough, my phone died around 3 p.m. I messaged her when I had 1% left and told her I was on my way back. She frantically tried reaching out to me to tell me she figured out the GPS and was sending another carrier out to meet me to show me how to do it on my scanner. I ignored them. When I returned, she tried to write me up for insubordination/refusal to deliver. I refused to sign the write-up and wrote up my own undeliverable report detailing everything that had happened, including the instructions she gave and what our union rep told us. She refused to sign that in retaliation. I took her pen and wrote, "Manager refused to sign acknowledgement" in all caps, and called the rep back right in front of her to let them know I'd be filing a grievance the next day, and went to go unload my truck. As I was unloading, I saw other carriers also coming back and having the same conversation with her. Apparently, they'd heard me tell her in the morning what I planned to do and decided to do the same. The sub-postmaster and the district postmaster both had to come in to finish delivering the packages. I quit not long after this, but I heard from other carriers she was fired by the end of the year. I now have a newfound understanding for the bullcrap the mail carriers put up with, and have since started leaving snacks and waters for my mail carriers. I have a good friend who works in this field, and it's definitely not for the faint of heart. You always have to kind of be on the beat, moving at a very good pace, and you would be surprised how little appreciation they ever get from people when they actually do hand off packages. They tell me once in a blue moon they might get offered a water or a soda, and this is coming from a place where it's pretty hot almost every single day. I think it's just really easy to take UPS, USPS, Amazon drivers for granted. Budakyle commented, "I'm shocked she was fired. Our project manager literally hid first-class mail repeatedly over the holiday season and was so awful to people that one carrier left a self-unaliving note detailing it was her fault he was doing it. She was moved to another office, and the grievance was delayed for over a year and a half. She'd also done this in 3 cities over 2 states before being the PM for my office. Let's not forget our 37 to 44-year-old vehicles that constantly break down and catch on fire, that don't have anti-lock brakes, airbags, or air conditioning. Last summer, I clocked the inside of my truck at 136 degrees with the windows down. Didn't stop it from filling with gas fumes every day either. I don't miss that place. It is actually heck." The Dirty Pilgrim commented, "I worked at a gas station next to a post office. Those cats made 4 times what I made. The poor idiots." Our next story is, "You want me to reject everything? Okay." Around 2008, I worked for a big multinational consulting company, setting up a development center in my country. This center was meant to be specialized devs that can create code way faster than do-it-all kind of devs for cheaper on an offshore country. The reality was, like in all consulting companies, very different, except for the "for cheaper" part that was true. The team consisted of a truckload of recent graduates or university students that were given a 2 to 3 week course on a technology, plus a couple team leaders and probably around 1 overworked senior dev per team. Oh, and a PMO/QA department. PMO means, for those who don't know, Project Management Office. The PMO had to make sure that those plans for a coffee machine ended up with a coffee machine being delivered instead of a coffee mug, or that if the customer asked for a Porsche 911, it ends with a car, not a bike with a Porsche 911 sticker on the side. Examples that everyone can understand. The company actually dealt with software. I was part of that PMO/QA department. When I say part, it means me and another experienced guy handled everything PMO, and a QA senior and a QA junior handled all the testing plans of all the teams. So 4 people to do PMO and QA for around 80 to 100 devs split between 14 to 16 teams. To make things worse, the top brass decided to certify the dev center with ISO practices, which meant that PMO work grew quite a bit, and we had to be on top of everything much more since we needed to have everything perfect for the appraisal. The head of the dev center was El Jefe. He was a Spanish villainous lad who had a knack for firing, underpaying people, and generally cutting expenses to the minimum. He decided that having an HR department was too much for the company, so he scrapped the dev center's one and had one in another country handle everything. He scrapped aptitude and attitude tests, and he conducted interviews himself. That's why the devs were the most random collection of, let's just say, curious human beings available for cheap in the market. including the narcolepsy albino goth metal guy, the former bodyguard, the guy that did parkour during the weekends and wasn't able to use his hands to type on a keyboard every Monday, and so many more characters that would render the office as a pretty normal workplace environment. El Jefe calls me and the other PMO guy and says, "Listen, the quality of requirements coming to the dev center is really lacking. ISO will fail us if they see what we accept. Draft a standard template and a guide on how requirements should be sent to us, and I'll forward it to all our customers. From now on, every single requirement that enters the center has to be evaluated and can be rejected if they don't meet standards." What El Jefe doesn't remember is that we're developing an internal app for the whole company, and requirements are being sent via email on a Word document that has connected phrases and thoughts directly from the CEO and CTO of the whole multinational company that the dev team has to make sense of. So I say, "Everything? Are you sure?" Because before I can even muster another word, El Jefe burst into flames and says, "Am I speaking Chinese or what? Everything is everything. Do your freaking job and don't bother me with this anymore." Roger that, and we left. Sent a quick meeting notes email to El Jefe, drafted the template and guide according to the ISO requirements, sent it to El Jefe, and carried on with our work. Next week, update on requirements directly from the CTO. I don't even bother opening the document. I hit reply and copy and paste the established message, "Requisite rejected, not compliant with established standards." Literally 30 seconds after replying, the telephone rings. "This is CTO. Who gave you power to reject a requisite from me? Don't you know who I am?" I reply, "Hi CTO. Yes, I know who you are. El Jefe told us that we have to reject every single thing that's not ISO compliant, no matter where it comes from. I have the notes from the meeting. I tried to tell him that we were doing things slightly different on your project. He said that everything had to be done by the book, so I have to reject your request. I can forward you the template you have to complete again if you want." Not even answering, CTO finishes the call and I can hear El Jefe's phone ringing. All I could hear from our desk is El Jefe saying, "Yes, yes, no, I understand, but I know. Yes, please no, won't happen again. I will tell them. Yes, sorry about that. Thank you." And El Jefe comes out of the office, white as a ghost, slowly walks towards our desk and says, "Guys, the internal app project is excluded from the ISO scope, so we don't have to be strict with it." Yeah, OP was back down into that corner of picking which side they want to kind of fail on. Do they want to look bad to the CTO and explain why they did what they did? Or do they want to look bad to El Jefe and maybe that kind of endangers themselves and their job security a little bit more? You definitely just stick to what El Jefe said and let them make a fool of themselves. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely crazy malicious compliance story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.